Good evening and welcome to the High Demand Webcast. We are excited about having you as part of this webcast tonight where we are going to talk about the amazing spring results of the 40 Days for Life campaign. We're also going to talk about 40 Days for Life 365 and give you an overview of the abortion landscape, including abortion pills and what is going well and not going well right now in the pro-life movement. And somebody joining me on this webcast is Mr. Steve Carlin, the campaign director of 40 Days for Life. Welcome back to Texas.
Glad to be here. Happy Easter and another successful campaign in the books.
Yeah, it's been really awesome. We want to apologize to everybody in New England who participated in 40 Days for Life and has been covered in snow for the last 2 months, but they had a lot of victories in that part of the country. We had tremendous amount of victories across the nation, and no bad things happened.
No bad things. A campaign without a crisis.
A campaign without a crisis, which we will take, and we're going to get into legal later and some huge legal victories that we've had at 40 Days for Life that will help your free speech where you live. But we didn't have a lot of legal drama, which is great. I think confidence is at an all-time high of participating in a 40 Days for Life. And the reason we're calling this the High Demand Webcast is because the demand for 40 Days for Life is at an all-time high and really has been since the overturning of Roe versus Wade way back in 2022. We've just gone up and continued to add new cities because a lot of people who thought, you know, once Roe was overturned, they may have been hesitant to lead or hesitant to participate in a 40 Days for Life campaign, and we love a winner. Now they see we are winning. I need to go all in. I need to finally participate.
Yes, and that's why there's so much to be grateful for this evening and at this point in history. So why don't we open in prayer? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the just completed 40 Days for Life campaign, for all the lives that have been saved, the workers who have encountered you and left their jobs, and for the abortion facilities that continue to close and go out of business. Lord, we ask you to please bless our time together tonight, and please bless all of our leaders, all participants, all 40 Days for Life supporters, and continue to advance your will in bringing about an end to abortion throughout the world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I mentioned the legal victories, and we're going to get to that, our lawsuit with the DOJ, which we won on behalf of Mark Houck and his family. David DeLayden cleared of all charges also. We also saw, we sent this out recently, of the pro-abortion guy who wrote the letter to the editor saying, I went out there to support Planned Parenthood, and I was embarrassed of my own, abortion supporters. And I think that ties into something else that happened during the campaign, which was the death of Kermit Gosnell, the notorious abortion doctor out of Philly, who was had his own staff turn him in because he was, in his lawyer's words, finishing the job by decapitating babies who survived an abortion. He was charged with murder. We've talked a lot about him on the podcast. We've written about Kermit Gosnell, and he was raided in 2010. Okay, he was horrible. He's bad. Everybody hates Gosnell. Planned Parenthood's like, oh, that's not the proper way to do healthcare. All their nonsense. That's just the standard position on the left now, is that we deny healthcare to a baby boy or a baby girl who survives an abortion. And people get mad when you say that, saying, you're calling half the country Kermit Gosnell. I'm not. But I am saying that they're supporting what he did. Yeah. And we're all outraged. And, it was the worst thing ever what he did. And he had to be sitting in prison post-Roe, looking at all these states pass these laws, which what he was doing would have been perfectly legal under these current states, some of these blue states. And it just shows, number one, sadly, he was ahead of his time. And number two, this reaction on the other side, which is what this guy was writing about in the letter to the editor, is just anger and all abortion at any week for as long as humanly possible. And if the baby survives, we're going to deny health care.
Yeah, what got him multiple life sentences behind bars is not. It'd been fascinating had he been in a state like California or Illinois. If they would they have let him out? Would they have released him from prison? I don't know.
We toyed with the idea of doing a free Gosnell campaign to sort of highlight that. We thought maybe it wouldn't be received all that well, the free Gosnell signs. But of course, that was tongue in cheek because how do you keep him locked up? in
Yeah.
New York or California, you know? And anyways, that is definitely something that happened, but it shows how much the tide has turned in a post-Roe America now that we're years away from that, and we see the landscape. And the landscape is in our favor, which is what we said right when the Supreme Court overturned Roe, that the pro-life movement was built for a post-Roe America. 40 Days for Life was certainly built to thrive in a post-Roe America because we're built from the grassroots. We have local leaders, and of course we grew in these states that embraced abortion and expanded abortion law.
And the response to that is, well, what about the abortion pills? How is 40 Days for Life going to stop those? And I think we're beginning to see an answer to that, because this 40 Days for Life campaign, we saw more lives saved through abortion pill reversal than we've ever had documented during a 40 Days for Life campaign. And we also had reports from the front lines on the sidewalks where our 40 Days for Life leaders and volunteers were saying that there were women coming and they weren't sure if they were going to have the abortion or if they were going to choose life or choose adoption. But they knew one thing: they weren't going to take the abortion pill, because the word of mouth of just the complications, the side effects, that is beginning to spread. And we saw multiple reports from across the country this campaign where women were rejecting the abortion pill because of those side effects and complications. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to continue to be there. We're going to offer an alternative. If they do take the pill, we're going to offer the reversal. And we've seen that start to come to fruition in this spring campaign.
Yeah, and people underestimate the bad word of mouth that abortion pills have. And surgical abortion just didn't have that same weight of just a bad word of mouth. There are a lot of women that said, no, I went and had it, and some say it was painful, others say it wasn't, and that's just kind of the way it was. Every woman who's had the chemical abortions has talked about it was a lot of bleeding, it was much more painful than I thought it was gonna be, and then the saddest part, I saw my baby. I saw my baby in the toilet. We hear that all the time. And word of mouth matters in abortion, as it matters with everything, but especially with abortion. If you can meet a woman, you're thinking of having an abortion, and she says it just wasn't that big of a deal, I went in and I left, it's much easier to go get the abortion. But if you talk about bleeding hours and days in your own apartment, and women talking about they can't even go in their bathroom anymore because it gives them nightmares, that's a whole new level. That's why I think we've seen the abortion pill numbers peak. We've talked a lot about abortion pill statistics on the 40 Days for Life podcast and in Day 41 magazine. There's a lot of inaccuracies out there as far as the stockpiling the pills, but the pills are still by far the #1 threat right now. And we went on offense this spring with a huge expose of this unfortunate growing trend that nobody's been talking about, which is the fact that abortion pills, mailing them, through the mail, has empowered bad men to conduct forced abortions. And so we did a news story, the New York Post, we'll put that article up on the screen. They did a huge story on it earlier this year, and then Day 41 magazine, we've highlighted it. We've highlighted on the podcast. You have men forcing their girlfriends or wives or mistresses to take 11 pills at gunpoint. You have blueberry muffins with the pills sprinkled in, smoothies with the pills sprinkled in, and these are women that want their babies and are having forced abortion put on them.
Yeah, so exposing that, I think, has been an eye-opener to not just preaching to the choir, but to people who consider themselves pro-choice too. So I'm very enthusiastic about kind of seeing that tide to begin to turn a little bit. And I think 40 Days for Life is oftentimes on the cutting edge of where is the culture going. We were talking about mail order abortion pills 10 years ago.
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
And the reason is because we've got 1 million people out on the streets around the world who can kind of observe these trends and report back to us.
As much as we'd like to congratulate ourselves on being able to see what was coming in the future, it's just because of our volunteer base.
The heroes who are out there in the rain and the cold and the wind and the heat, they're out there and they're getting us this information. And that's why, I think it'll probably be a year or two before we begin to kind of see, is this, are we able to quantify it? But the fact that we have, again, across the country, women saying, I don't want any part of that abortion pill. We know this is the way pregnancy centers are effective. A 40 Days for Life volunteer directs a woman to the pregnancy center. Then a year later, her cousin is pregnant and says, hey, go to the pregnancy center where the 40 Days for Life people took me. I think we're seeing a similar factor with the abortion. Oh, you're pregnant? I know one thing. Don't take that pill. I took that pill. So this is really good news and encouraging.
It is good news, and we see it on the sidewalks through the saves, the babies that are saved, the workers who had a conversion. Certainly, we just had another abortion facility close. I'm not going to put you on the spot and say what number that is, but we're getting close to 200.
185.
185. I knew you'd pull the stat out. Even if you made that up, that's good. So it's really, really encouraging to see so many abortion facilities close. And if you remember at the end of 2025, we said we would be watching this closely because we saw this huge slew of Planned Parenthoods close in 2025. I think 64 of their facilities, somewhere in that range. And just in that year, they had the defunding last summer. And so that certainly played a role in it. But the ones they close now is even more significant. And we're continuing to see that trend. And I think we'll see it. Their fiscal year ends on September 30th.
Some of the recent batch, too, you may notice it was Planned Parenthood of, I want to say, Washington, Oregon, Indiana, and Kentucky. Doesn't make much sense, does it? It's because they were already circling the wagons and trying to save a dying affiliate in Indiana and Kentucky by combining it with something in the Northwest, which is relatively pro-abortion. And it's obviously not working because they're still having to shutter abortion facilities. One other trend that I noticed, Sean, that I just wanted to point out here is we're doing a lot to, and the volunteers and leaders are doing a lot to prevent abortions, but when women have abortions, we saw really a remarkable number of stories of women finding healing through the 40 Days for Life campaign. A tremendous story in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They have a 40 Days for Life minivan there, and a woman came and put a note on it about how the abortion ruined her life and she needs help, and here's my phone number and please call me. My hometown vigil, Madison, Wisconsin, there were people out on the sidewalk praying, and somebody came by and left like a memorial. Sometimes you'll see like the roadside memorials if someone loses their life in a car accident. Came and put a memorial to their baby right on the property. So the vigils, I think, are helping not just to prevent abortions, but to help bring about the healing after they take place.
Yeah, and as we show some of the pictures from this vigil, from the vigils from the spring campaign, it's so beautiful to see. We joke about the weather, but it's a real thing. We actually save more babies per capita, per campaign, in the spring than the fall, because spring is not really spring. It's obviously winter and heavy winter for most of the country, especially this spring. It was beautiful in parts in the Midwest, but it was miserable in New England and the East Coast. They really got hit hard with snow, and the women see that, and they see that we do care about them, and that particularly those who have just had an abortion, we're the first people that they encounter when they're leaving that facility. And what we say, what we don't say, our disposition can go a very long way in helping them find hope and healing. And speaking of hope and healing, we are now joined by former Planned Parenthood manager Ramona Trevino. You have been traveling a lot.
Just a little.
But we got to get to this Glendale, Arizona story. This is just the best because we say versions of this all the time. This is actually, I think, the best version I've ever heard, is when you were at their closing rally in Glendale.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I like to remind our volunteers that this happens. I've never personally witnessed it myself.
Okay.
And so to be able to have this experience firsthand in Glendale during the closing rally, day 39 of the campaign, phenomenal. So there were about 54 of us out on the sidewalk. We had just ended an amazing, beautiful, moving candlelight vigil. A young man, probably early 20s, starts, coming by very slowly in his SUV, and then, you kind of have,
It's always bad news.
Here it comes,
The car is
he
slowing.
rolls down his window, and here it comes, and he starts to yell, only it's good things. And he's saying, thank you guys for being out here. Because of you, I'm having a baby girl, my baby, so he's headed to the hospital.
He was going to the hospital and
Just
he
right down
drove
the
past
street.
the vigil, stopped and said, because of you, my baby girl's being born today.
Yes, and God bless you, God bless you. He's super excited, super ecstatic when he's, you could tell he was just full of emotion. Everybody erupts in cheers.
So awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That's the best. So that's never happened to you personally, where
No.
the couple pulls up?
No, I
Okay.
have not. I've not
Okay.
had that experience.
Okay.
And so we hear this all the
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah.
We get these stories countless times all over the country, all over the world.
Right.
I'm always so, part of the things that I say to encourage our leaders and volunteers is to remind them that these things happen, right? And so to just witness it myself. And I had just said that when I was closing my statements up.
This is just something I say in a speech. It never actually happens. It sounds good. Yeah, it's totally, it's happened to me twice, but it was me and 2 or 3 other people out.
Exactly.
But when you have a
This is
crowd,
54 people out.
it shows so good. And can we go on a little tirade about just all the stuff that we hear about 40 Days for Life volunteers harassing people and you're just causing noise and it does no good. I mean, that guy is literally on the way to the hospital.
Yeah.
And he could have just been like, said a prayer for us, but he stopped. He's screaming at everyone, thank you for being out here. My baby girl is going to be born today because of you. Makes it all worth it.
Well, and I can imagine too, as he's coming down the street, he sees this huge crowd of people with their, their candles lit, and he's probably overcome with all types of emotion and thinking, I've got to stop and tell them right now. Like normally, like you said, it's 2 or 3 volunteers on the side of the street, and then to have this many people witness it. I think it's going to be a beautiful shot in the arm, wonderful injection for everybody that was there that night.
It's also a great story for him to tell his daughter one day. Like on the way to you being born, I thanked the people that helped save your life. So absolutely beautiful. I know we can't beat that, but we've got to get to a different topic, not as inspiring, but we need to cover it. And that is the distraction that is Planned Parenthood. They have forgotten their mission. They have forgotten about all their talking phrases about healthcare and reproductive rights and woman and her doctor, and all that's gone. And they're doing Botox.
And IV fluid, whatever.
It's like hangover
Fluid.
Yeah, hangover. Yeah, they'll hook you up to an IV. Okay, we're not advertising it, but they continue. I mean, the trans thing was one, because they're all lumped into this crowd, so they had to kind of get into that. But that's not really profitable for them. Abortion, as you know more than anybody, is their bread and butter for profit. Why the Botox? Is this, oh no, they're expanding and we need to be worried, they're going to make even more money, or is this
This reeks of desperation.
we're not needed anymore, so we're doing Botox?
It just reeks of desperation to me. And I saw this back in 2022. I feel like I called it back then, that they would start going into more of hormonal therapy, replacement therapy, and things like that, because they're going to look for an alternative source to their income and their profit and their bottom line. And I think, again, this just reeks of desperation.
I think so too, and we have covered Planned Parenthood a lot on these webcasts. We've covered it on the podcast. You've been such a great expert at knowing what we should be worried about and what we shouldn't be worried about. And after a whole year of closing 64, Planned Parenthood locations, we see that continue. And that's something at Christmas we were saying we need to watch the Q1 and see, how many they close leading into the end of their fiscal year, which is September 30th. Are they gonna close another slew? Because now every Planned Parenthood, they're building new facilities, and we're out there in front of those. Some of these mega abortion facilities, but the closures, Steve and I just talked about, they had some in Kentucky, but there's Washington State. There's very pro-abortion places where they celebrate abortion where they're having to close. So I think the Botox is a distraction. What's the plan? If you were a manager still and you said, okay, I didn't get fired after the fall of Roe, so I guess I need to be grateful for that. I'm still around despite the defunding. Now we're doing Botox. First now we're doing the transgender drugs and all of that. Like, I got involved because I wanted to help women, which most workers, I believe, that is their motivation.
Right.
You've said that, Abby said that, Sue Thayer said that. It is we want to help women. How long, the turnover's I know we've talked about turnover, they're having a huge problem, but how long can they stretch this?
I don't know.
And keep people?
I don't know. Like, I would imagine that, having to now train employees, or I don't know if they're going to be hiring, like, who are you hiring in to do the Botox and do these things, right? Or are you going to go ahead and train your existing employees? So in my experience when I was managing, that's what they wanted to train clinic managers to do something different, which was Depo-Provera injections and to draw blood. So now they were trying to turn us into phlebotomists, right?
With no medical background.
medical background, no, official training. And that bothered me because I knew what type of training, quote unquote training I received, when I was taught how to check blood pressure.
Right.
And I'm like, it was just like, here you go, put the cuff on, look at this, and then, okay, you're good, you're ready to go. Just start checking people's blood pressure as they come in. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I would say I had, kind of the aptitude to do it, but that doesn't mean that everyone that's employed by Planned Parenthood does. So then as maybe even a patient would be, I don't know that I want to get Botox from someone at Planned Parenthood. What kind of training have you received? That type of thing.
Right. Well, the reason too this is so significant is because still we're years past the overturning of Roe, and we've seen Planned Parenthood put through the ringer, and they've had a terrible CEO during this time period, which has been good for us. But so goes abortion in America. So they are still the leader. They still have the most political influence. The defunding, they could be refunded in July. I don't think that will happen, but it could. And they're still, we're not picking on them saying, oh, they're going away. They're not. They are fading, but they're not out by any means, and they still control the abortion industry in the United States, even with the pills being our huge priority right now. And so there's still a lot of money to be made, and they're still building new facilities, but they are a shell of what they were in, I would say, even 2019 or 2018. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. Yep.
I mean, the days of Cecile Richards, who I just thought, I don't know what needs to happen besides prayer and fasting, which is why we're involved in 40 Days for Life. But I mean, under her leadership, they were just absolutely booming. They were getting more funding than ever. And then Biden came and they got even more funding. But just there's multiple layers to this, which is they've had bad leadership, Roe was overturned, and they got defunded. That's kind of the trifecta that happened to them very fast. And I don't think they've responded very well. And now they're just plugging in. I mean, they're going to start putting gumball machines at the front of the place. Be like, oh, there's a lot of quarters in the, I think we can really make some money off this.
Well, it's difficult too to try to defend your stance on being a healthcare provider. Really? Botox?
Right. Well, you're now off the rails. And we've all known those doctors who were like, their practice was really legit, and then they just got into some weird stuff.
Yes,
And it definitely takes a hit. And Planned Parenthood already struggled with their little man syndrome to sit at the legitimate healthcare table.
Yes.
And they struggled with that as is because of their main income was abortions. And now they're doing this. So you got to be very optimistic about the future.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you shared that Arizona story.
It's the best.
It's absolutely unbelievable. Great leaders throughout Arizona, and we're going out there for our symposium this summer. So we are going to the desert, where it will be a dry heat of 119 degrees. Very cheap to do conferences out in the desert in July. So we look forward to seeing a lot of our leaders out there. And one of the many ways we will train those leaders in Arizona this summer is our legal training, which is second to none and led by General Counsel of 40 Days for Life, Mr. Matt Britton. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
I've already teased, actually I said it, that we won our DOJ case thanks to you and your leadership, and you're representing the Houck family. He had his house raided by the FBI. We've talked a lot about that on webcasts and podcasts, and you had a great team, and what does it feel like to not only just win, but have that to be done with?
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and I know it's tongue-in-cheek. There's a huge team of people, and I was, like I just told Mark and his wife, Ryan Marie, it was a privilege to represent them. We were from the very beginning when Mark texted me a picture of the original summons that was dropped when the city DA was in league with the DOJ. And then I remember when he sent me, he goes, hey, I got this letter. It's a target letter investigated. And then, of course, we sent the letter saying, hey, he's not guilty of anything, but if you do charge him, we'll peacefully turn him in, which they ignored. They ignored the calls. They
Which
ignored
is so
everything.
crazy that they would ignore his offer.
So they
to turn
brought it.
himself
Well,
in.
that's the only way they could do their kabuki theater and try and threaten and scare everybody else into silence. And fortunately, Mark stood his ground. Ryan Maria's wife stood his ground. Didn't take the plea agreement with essentially no time to one of the felonies, and he just didn't do it. They just manufactured this evidence. Well, they didn't manufacture the evidence. They manufactured the legal argument in relation to the evidence. I'm not saying the government made up evidence, but it was not even probable cause to arrest him, and certainly not with 20 officers, fully automatic weapons, pointed feet from his children in a dawn raid and his wife. And so after Mark was acquitted by a Philadelphia jury within an hour,
He was facing 11 years.
he was.
I mean,
They
I know
changed it to 11. So he was facing less, but they said that the first time that he did it across the street 30 minutes earlier was a precursor event, and it bumped the other one up to 8. I mean, it was ridiculous. They did everything they could to force, and that's what a bad, that is what prosecutors do with a weak case. They deal it away and make a sweetheart deal that nobody could refuse. Hey, man, you could be going to prison for 11 years. We'll give you no time. You just plead to one felony. Plead to something you didn't do in case you get convicted, because fear and despair are the tools of the devil. And when you are a Christian man and and struggling for sainthood, you have the devil attacking you. I remember when Mark told me the jury was out, and he said, "What's going to happen?" And his lawyer said, "Man, I just don't know." And he turned to his sister and he said, "Take care of my family. I'm going to prison." And then they came back a minute later and
acquitted
so
him.
anyway, then we sued him. And you're right, I did get together a team. We had a great team in Philly. We had a great team in Kansas City. And a lot of hands working, including the donors who paid for some of those. We did it pro bono through our ILJ, our fantastic donors. Thank you. We recently settled the case, I think largely due to the Trump administration as well, right? The Biden administration brought it. Trump administration agreed to a settlement of over $1 million for the Houck family.
Which is great. And this had real repercussions because whenever this happened, we had real fear in volunteers of going out. Is my house going to get raided? Am I going to end up like Mark Houck? And that was the biggest problem for us at 40 Days for Life. And now that we've announced this.
That's what they wanted.
It is what they wanted. They wanted to intimidate all pro-lifers. And you mentioned it, but God bless Mark Houck for saying, I'm not going to take the deal because they'll go after everybody who goes and prays on the street. And then he was acquitted. Then
It worked.
It worked.
We got a lot of calls where people saying, am I going to be the next Mark Houck? And not everybody's Mark Houck. Not everybody's going to stand up to it. Not everybody has a wife that's going to tell them, don't take a deal. Don't you take that deal and expect to come back. Come home come home with your sword or shield or on it. And not everybody can withstand that, right? And not everybody should. 40 Days for Life is peaceful, prayerful, and lawful. And some people, that's up to them and their conscience and God. But our charism is to be out in front of the abortion facility, offering hope and charity to these desperate women and men who are seeking the wrong solution they think is a solution, not to be in the penitentiary or the local jail. That's also a mission, but not ours. And so I feel as though Mark actually turned from them trying to make an example out of him to scare us and silence us, and what we call in the law, chill our rights, to actually an example, a heroic example, to lead forward and say, well, in the end, the system prevailed.
It did, and you've said for many years that you don't trust lawyers or judges, but you do trust juries. And this was a great example. I love it because we decided we're going to go after the DOJ. We're going to sue them. Everybody said you can't fight City Hall, and there's a lot of truth to that. And it does seem like an uphill battle, and it was. But they righted their wrong, and it was really, really awesome. And just the few leaders, we announced this, recently, but the leaders that I've talked to, they said, thank God, this is going to help me with my local vigil, because there were still people that think, if you go out and pray at an abortion facility, you're going to be rounded up. which, as you articulated, is exactly what the Biden DOJ wanted.
But that's all they can do. You know, our leader in Frankfurt, who is also a lawyer, used to say the process is the punishment.
Yeah.
And that's what they did to Mark. Praise be to God, he didn't serve 2.5 years or was held without bond, and then he got acquitted, right? He was chained to a desk for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, not told what it was about, and then released on bond by the magistrate. And then because the magistrate's like, he shoved a guy. I'm not going to hold him without bond. That's,
Right.
The DA dropped it.
Right.
Like, so, thank God. And so, you know, $1 million is a lot of money, but it ain't gonna make up for 2.5 years. So thank God he was only chained to a desk. But the ordeal and what happened to his family and what they went through is ongoing. And we saw it in the DOJ, right? Because, I mean, in the ILJ, the Institute of Law and Justice, which is 40 Days for Life's legal arm, and we only represent the leaders. We saw when this occurred, so many people came out and said, okay, now we know a lawyer. You know, most people don't know a lawyer, and if they do, they don't like him. They
Right.
avoid him at the barbecue, right? And but when you need one, all of a sudden you're like, hey, buddy, sorry I was avoiding you at the barbecue all
Right.
those years. I got a DUI. Could you know? And of course, nobody's guilty. They're being persecuted. And so the point is that we've had so many cases and we're continuing on. It's been, I think, such a great success. We do get great feedback. And we're looking at like 250 requests. Some of them aren't actually legal, and
Right.
Steve's team handled it, but we're handling about 150 a year among 5 lawyers, and that's a good amount.
It's a lot, and we were honored to have the AG in Missouri ask us to help protect their pro-life laws.
April Wilson, who is a former elected DA and county attorney in Missouri, tried that case. I went. Ramona testified. Haywood offered to be an expert witness. Dr. Donato Barillo looked over their expert testimony for them and acted.
They're just trying to get rid of their pro-life laws. Planned Parenthood's suing them.
Yes, Planned Parenthood is, you know, just because they're on the wrong side, just because they've chosen even evil, killing other people's babies for money, doesn't mean they're stupid. So the day after Amendment 3 passed in Missouri, putting abortion up to viability into the state of Missouri's Constitution, the center, the breadbasket of America, used to have no abortion. The day after that, Planned Parenthood sued to wipe out every single law and regulation in the state relating to abortion. You couldn't regulate it. Well, what about clean instruments? Nope, no clean instrument. Well, what about like having good light? Nope. What about like having a locked door or a hallway that a gurney could go? Nope. Well, but why? We have that for toenail surgery.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Barbers.
Because it's abortion. It's like Peter Kreeft, our buddy, said. You can talk about nuclear weapons, you can talk about any of the great areas, but once you talk about anything having to do with sex,
It's out.
right, and abortion is the result of failed
Yeah.
contraception, he says.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we have we filed a brief in one in North Dakota, where the judge said that the Second Amendment wiped out the abortion laws
That was
in
an
his
interesting
state. Yeah,
one.
that was
That
an
was different.
interesting one that I still don't understand. We're filing amicus brief in Barber v. Trump, which I hope will, nobody's talking about it, but leading to personhood, where the federal court said that an alien who had no legal status in the United States, who was pregnant and conceived here, couldn't be deported because of her unborn child's
Right.
citizenship rights.
Right.
Well, last I checked, you couldn't kill a citizen.
Right. The left is using the life of the unborn
what they're doing.
for their immigration
They don't
stance.
know what they're doing.
But I said that after Kamala lost, they traded abortion and trans for immigration as their new moral crusade, because those other two were dismal
Oh,
failures.
you get kids in cages and they're
Right.
starving to death and all that stuff. And I think that the Speaker of the House did a defense. I think it was kind of silly, but he did a whole biblical defense of it. So there are definitely, let's say, two sides of the fence,
Sure.
the wall on it. But
For sure.
But look, I don't know whether that judge was a sneaky pro-lifer who's like, hey, this is gonna. But the fact of the matter is if you can't deport an unborn child,
Right.
then you can't kill it.
Then you can't kill them.
Because it says citizenship rights. So we're doing that and so many other things in the appellate courts. But we also tried a bunch of cases, you know. Went to court when we had to, when people got charged. Not a single one of them prevailed. None of the charges. We
Which
were
is
able to
great.
prevail in all that. And also, we are law-abiding. So we've had a lot of people call up and say, hey, Planned Parenthood says they own the sidewalk or they own the, could you give us a boundary. We'll give you a boundary line. We'll give you the official boundary line of where you can and can't be and where it is in public, right? Because we don't want you being arrested for trespass. Right? We want to be a peaceful presence for those desperate women out on the street so that we can pray and fast and hopefully do some outreach to say, yes, it's a long walk, but we'll walk it with you. And we're allowed to say that. And when the government says you can't say that, then we can sue them.
But we're undefeated, and every time I say that or you point that out, you say, yeah, but that's gonna end because you can find a lawyer if he's undefeated.
That's not, our goal is to fight all the fights, including the hard ones. And the first boss I ever had said, you tell me a lawyer who's never, show me a lawyer who's never lost a case, I'll show you a lawyer who doesn't take hard cases. I understand that.
I think suing the DOJ is a hard case.
Yeah, I mean, taking on City Hall, and when I was a prosecutor, every prosecutor has a 90+ conviction rate, even if they're lousy, because you don't get arrested for nothing. They bring you your client in the handcuffs,
Right.
And so, I mean, they're kind of guilty, right? So unless there's a loophole. So even a bad prosecutor.
Spoken like a true prosecutor. If you weren't guilty, you wouldn't be here.
That's right. You know it. You've been on a jury.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, you mean the guy in handcuffs? No, I have no prejudice against him.
I always get knocked out because I'm like, but he really looks guilty.
Yeah. I'll give the guy in handcuffs in a jumpsuit
He
a fair
looks like
trial.
he's bad, but he hasn't said anything. You don't know any of the evidence.
Fair trial and then execute.
So true.
Yeah, so I think that there will be some times we will get knocked to our knees. But you know what? That's where we should be, on our knees. And we're going to keep, Justice Rehnquist was often, there's 9 members of the United States Supreme Court. He was often 1 to 8. A couple years later, he was 2 to 7, meaning he was losing. He was the only one. But you know what happened 15 years later? He was 6 to 3, 7 to 2. He had swayed the court by persuasion, by carrying on what St. Jose Maria calls a quiet apostolate. And I know what's right. I can do what's right without vilifying the men and women on my right and left who also think they're doing what's right. I can do that. And after a while, you lead by example, like St. Francis. And so we might get knocked down and we might be in the minority, but in the end, we're going to prevail.
And the most important thing is that you, our volunteers and leaders and donors, know that we protect our people. And you've done such a good job at that. You're always available. You get on the phone with people. It can be a minor issue. It can be a major issue.
Well, everything's big to you.
Everything's big when it's
right,
your
when it's
name.
you, when your name's on that paper, it can be a trespass. And it's just a trespass. It can be a destruction of property because you chalked on the sidewalk, right? But when your name's on that paper, it's different. They're like, so we're going to get you out of this. Don't worry. Don't worry about it. It says I could go to jail for 3 days.
Right.
So when you have a neighbor dispute, it's a big deal. It can wreck your entire life. And you're like, you know what? Your neighbor's playing loud music. You're like, my kids can't sleep. I got to move.
Yeah.
So every case, we understand that. And when I used to sit on the board overseeing discipline in Virginia for lawyers, 80% of the complaints were just the communication. Not that their lawyer lied to them, lost the case, was a bad lawyer, was a bad man, stole from them, but that they just wouldn't call them back.
Wow.
So we get back to everybody, as you know. That's no complaint will ever come about me or my team that the guy didn't call me back. Right?
No, unless if we would just think that you're dead. If you didn't show up or didn't answer your phone.
That's right. If I die, I won't call you back. But April will.
But you'll try. You'll try. Do your best. He's in the ditch. But no, you've done a great job. It's been awesome. And I always want to emphasize this on these webcasts because no one else can go out and save the baby if we don't. And that's what 40 Days for Life is built on. And that's why you got to get rid of that if you want to thrive as an abortion doctor, as an abortion industry. And that's why we have to protect the people who are going out to save the babies. And this has always been a problem, frankly. As the late, great Joe Scheidler said, there'd be no First Amendment without the pro-life movement. And it's got to be something that we protect. And so I'm very grateful for you, and I'm certainly grateful for the entire ILJ team. You have hired so well. We have a great team, and protecting free speech for all Americans is something we have to do, because if we don't do it, we're not going to be able to save a baby. And so, speaking of free speech disasters, we will now go to England, where they are butchering free speech, and get an update from our international campaign director, Mr. Robert Cahoon. Robert, take it away.
Hi, this is Robert Cahoon, Director of International Campaigns for 40 Days for Life. And what a campaign we've had on the international side of 40 Days for Life. Incredible international campaigns. We've seen renewed enthusiasm, we've seen great vision, and we've seen campaigns come back from being away for a few years, starting all again. Well, let's start in Kingston in Jamaica. They had 9 babies saved. In addition, 7 people committed themselves to the Lord. They had stones thrown at them. They had bottles thrown at them. Despite all the challenges, they had to go to the police with a level of oppression and persecution and harassment that they were receiving. Despite all this, they did a great sidewalk outreach conference. They had an absolutely incredible campaign. And being the church on the streets, they took the love of God out to where abortions are happening. Even though abortion's illegal in Jamaica, they had an absolutely wonderful campaign. Thank you to Dr. Daniel Thomas and all the leaders and volunteers, Diane Constantine. Absolutely brilliant job in Kingston in Jamaica. Well, we had several campaigns who were like Phoenix from the flames. They'd been away for some years, but they came back with a vengeance. And Sydney, Australia, Paul Hanrahan from Family Life International, getting out there with a vigil. He had Bishop come along. They got a motion passed by the New South Wales Parliament acknowledging the vigil. Come rain or shine, they were there in the streets praying. Had a team of young people helping facilitate the vigil. Absolutely brilliant job. We haven't had Sydney for quite a few years. Likewise, Hong Kong came back, having not done a campaign for a few years. Hong Kong did some brilliant outreach outside the Family Planning Centre there. In addition, our vigils in Asia, in Manila, in the Philippines, some absolutely photogenic, iconic photos from the outreach that they've been doing in the Philippines. Also with Taiwan, helping the churches to respond to the crisis of abortion, doing outreach in the streets and going to the churches there. Wonderful work from Sister Jochilis in Taiwan. And shout out also to Simon Archer in Auckland, New Zealand. They also kept the vigil going. There's a buffer zone in New Zealand. It's very hard to witness. They reached out, they met somebody who's an abortion doctor and shared his testimony of conversion as well. So I'm really in awe of how many good campaigns. One of the themes that we've seen during this campaign has been that campaigns who previously found 40 Days for Life difficult, trying to overcome apathy, indifference, struggling to keep the vigil, some of those campaigns really flourished this time, and the feedback was that this campaign was easier than the before. They had less persecution. For example, in Vienna, in Austria, they had a 24-hour prayer vigil with a prayer tent. It was snowing at the beginning of the campaign. They had a snowball fight at 4 a.m. in the morning. Thomas Buswell outside the Museum of Contraception and Abortion in Vienna, Austria, the busiest abortion center. They'd seen an abortion center close in previous years in Vienna. So they managed to keep that 960-hour vigil going, continuous without stop for the entire campaign. Absolutely amazing work in Vienna. In addition, we had grace-filled stories internationally. For example, in Glasgow in Scotland, they had a candlelit vigil for 150 people outside the buffer zone. In Birmingham, they did a procession outside of the buffer zone with 4 priests. In Glasgow, one of the volunteers, Mary, spoke to a shopkeeper who was in a crisis pregnancy. She decided to keep the child. They met that child this year. A beautiful example of reaching people where they are. In Modena, they spoke to somebody. In Italy, they spoke to somebody who was post-abortive in the street, and they managed to connect her with post-abortion services. In addition to that, we had in Basel in Switzerland, one of the team reach out to a woman who was in a crisis pregnancy. Absolutely amazing to hear these grace-filled stories. The church on the streets, reaching people who are either post-abortive, in a crisis pregnancy, or this witness is so powerful always. Also this campaign, we've seen more bishops, priests and cardinals attend our vigils than ever before on the international side. We had Cardinal Fitzgerald attend the Ealing Vigil in London. We had Bishop John Wilson and Bishop David Waller attend the Brixton Vigil in London. We also had Bishop Egan attend the vigil in Bournemouth. We had Archbishop Cardileone from San Francisco attend the Zagreb, Croatia Vigil. We also had Bosnia, Mostar Bosnia. The bishop's been supportive there. More support from priests, bishops, clergy than ever before. So that's really, really exciting. And Mostar, Bosnia, they did a Way of the Cross with 300 people. I'm in awe of what they're doing there. In Budapest, in Hungary, we had reports of several saves. They had a conference in January that was really successful. In Kingston, Jamaica, they did a sidewalk outreach conference. We held a conference in London and Bayswater. We're going to do a mission trip to Malawi in Africa. We're getting more interest from so many different places. We had, it's been a recent record, 16 saves from Europe at the time of recording. More reports of saves coming in every day. I'm really touched and overwhelmed with the level of support that we've had for the international side. Good reports that it's been easier to organise for stalwart leaders and volunteers. And I want to personally thank all of the leaders and volunteers. I'm thinking of Maureen Aduba in Jos, Nigeria. All of your hard work, your dedication and effort. Thank you for making 40 Days for Life a reality where you live. If you don't have a campaign in your city, get one organised, become a leader, pray and discern how you can be a witness for unborn children in the streets where you live. Well, that's pretty much a quick summary, a whistle-stop tour of the world. Great campaigns this time. We're still getting stories of babies saved. I've been in awe of many of the beautiful stories. To God be the glory. Thank you so much. Back to you, Sean.
Thank you, Robert, and it's so awesome to see how the world came knocking. Robert first brought 40 Days for Life to the UK in the fall of 2010 and has since done a great job at spreading it throughout the world, throughout Europe and Africa. We'll be having a conference in Africa that Robert and my next guest will be going to, and it is so beautiful to see, and it's always a whirlwind when you hear from Robert. He's getting a little world tour. Yeah. I think it's the accent that makes it, tolerable.
Robert's so special. I've been with him several places, Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda, London, and he just adapts to culture and people. It's just wonderful that we have someone with his ubiquitous qualities he's able to, he's quite an asset. I love traveling with him.
He is. He's a great travel buddy, and he's wonderful. And he'll be coming over when we train the leaders in Phoenix. I don't know if it's nice of us to bring him over when it's going to be 118 degrees in July at our leader training, but it'll be good to see him. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of things with you. I know you traveled a lot, and as a former abortion provider, what goes through your mind when you hear a current abortionist? We mentioned Dr. Kermit Gosnell died. What goes through your mind?
Well, you and I know he was a special individual. I don't think God grades on a curve. I think sometimes it's kind of easy for me to say, well, I wasn't as bad as Gosnell. God doesn't look at it that way, but unfortunately, there was an exceptional evil component about how he killed these kids and how horribly dirty and filthy his facility was and how unrepentant he was. And we were able to meet the producer and director of that movie about him, and she shared with us how just to be in his presence when he was in prison.
She interviewed him in prison.
In prison, how just his demonic presence. Well, my hope is that maybe in some last moments of his life, there was some repentant spirit there. I would hate that he died in the same spiritual posture that he was when he committed his dastardly act. So my heart is heavy for him. And but it shows to me that we as human beings, because of our fallen nature, we're basically capable of anything. Mm-hmm. He didn't start out that way. He was a medical student one day. He probably had a decent practice, practicing medicine, but it wasn't the abortion thing where he got his money. He was a prescription writer for controlled substances, the hydrocodone, the Tylenol number 3, or Tylenol with codeine. And then he, diversified into abortion. So we see a guy who just got on the wrong path and didn't seem to get off of it until he was caught, but hopefully in those last moments, there was some repentance.
And he did the deep dive because he definitely, few abortionists will speak out, as you know, but he was one that was a little bit more public, not as public as like Leroy Carhart and some of the others doing interviews constantly, but he was very proud of himself. He definitely had the martyrdom syndrome. He was helping these women. Nobody else would. He was an odd guy and a quirky guy playing the piano as the FBI is raiding his house. But there was an honesty about him that I think is relevant today in 2026, particularly in the United States. And that is, the goal of an abortion is to kill the baby. So when the baby is born alive because of a mistake or because of something didn't go right, the baby is alive, I finished the job taking scissors and decapitating them, which is what he ended up doing multiple times, and they ended up getting him on 5 accounts of murder. And so he went to prison. But his lawyer, I think Jack McMahon or Jack McMillan, I wrote about him in the beginning of The End of Abortion, he gives a very powerful pro-life argument in the closing argument, which is abortion is messy, it's dirty, we don't like to talk about it at family parties, I understand that, but the goal is to kill the baby, and he was willing to do it.
Well, I think we've got to be aware, it's not really about killing a baby. An abortion is just a procedure, right? So if you start a procedure to kill a baby, it's really irrelevant if the baby's half alive or born alive. You just finish the procedure because it's really not a human being. Well, it was in the uterus, halfway out when you do the partial birth abortion and suck the brain out, or all the way out and you cut off the head. You just see varying varieties or flavors, so to speak. The other thing that was wicked about that, he actually said he was doing research. You know, he had certain body parts that he kept as trophies, but he tried to say that it was part of his research that we just couldn't understand. But the longer you're in that type of construct, I think the more you believe what you're doing is right. And I know that that incremental depersonalization or dehumanization occurs step by step as the body and the spirit accommodates this evil. It's generally kind of like cancer, where you actually become part of the sin. It's an unfortunate thing to say that you're in a delusional state where you actually believe what you're doing is actually helping someone when it's actually the opposite. But you know, this is a spiritual battle, right? It's the father of lies. The devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and he is the father of lies. He cannot tell the truth. So that's what we saw in this unfortunate case with Dr. Gosnell.
Yeah, and you know, the FBI labeled his abortion facility the House of Horrors when they went in and they saw he had preserved some of these babies in jars, and it was just horrific. I understand all this is very graphic, but we need to discuss Gosnell. And, you know, everybody was outraged. Planned Parenthood, this is the worst thing ever. And I think he was ahead of his time because now we have a lot of states, it's not a couple, we have a lot of states that will not give health care, medical care to a baby boy or baby girl who survives an abortion. Gosnell believed the same thing. It was just 2009 and that was really bad, but he was definitely ahead of his time because I think part of him is he saw the fall of Roe and he started seeing, you know, California, New York deregulate abortions through all 40 weeks, not provide health care for babies who survive an abortion, and as a cherry on top, a lot of these states quit even requiring a doctor to be part of the abortion. He had to be sitting there going, and I'm in prison for this?
Yeah.
You know?
I was a pioneer.
Yeah.
The other thing that we saw in the Gosnell situation, there was a physician that knew about what was going on in his facility and hand-walked a report to the health department. But the health department there had a hands-off policy about inspecting abortion facilities, which is absolutely ridiculous. So he just went under the radar with the authorities who are supposed to be overseeing not only abortion facilities, but all health, it's not really health care, but it's designated so in the health department. So he had coverage of the government as an accomplice in this horrible house of horrors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was news, you know, and it happened, but yeah, he helped reveal the humanity of the baby. He helped reveal the barbaric, evil nature that is required in every abortion, and I think his life does shed light on the gravity and the brutality of abortion.
And I think what we also see here is that in our movement, we have grappled with how do we use graphic images, how
Right.
we don't use them. But his situation was so bad, you almost didn't have to see the images.
And they did a good job
But
of that
it's-
in the movie.
But it's the images that really make a difference. And we know historically, when you show the images, it's what really moves people. It was those images out of Vietnam that changed so many people's hearts. It's the images of seeing an Emmett Till. It's what the reality of it. And the image wasn't quite a picture, but Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was eventually became a play that opened the eyes of people about what slavery was about. So we have to get to an image or some type of imagery, which is the largest portion of how our sensory nervous system works, to make a difference. The cognitive things don't count. I knew the cognitive. I knew that life began in fertilization or conception, but it doesn't really make a difference until the reality of it, till God takes the scales off your eyes, like he did mine, like he did Abby Johnson's, and so many others, one day, and that's because it takes a supernatural event, a spiritual event, to come to the reality of what abortion is really about.
Well, that's beautifully stated, and I'm so grateful that we have you in your life. And you've been traveling a lot. You've been sharing your testimony. You went to a lot of 40 Days for Life campaign vigils, and so I'm glad that you're here. Your help, TSA. Did you get caught up in that, or
Didn't
were you
get caught up
spared?
in it. Well, I
Okay.
have TSA touchless pre-check. You know, my wife Daphne, she takes care of all of those special things. But I was there when ICE was in the airport, and they were so nice. You know, I just kind of wanted to do a theme song like a ding 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 ding. ding. Ice. I love them. They were so hospitable, so warm, so facilitating, and now looks like they're getting paid, and we can get
Things
back
are
on
getting back.
they're on the road again.
They're getting back to normal. No, I'm really thankful. You went to a lot of locations. You saw our wonderful local leaders. The campaign is going so well. This is why we have the High Demand Webcast, because so many more people are wanting to lead a campaign, and certainly more are going to be participating in the campaign. Matt and I were talking about the victory over the DOJ in defense of Mark Houck and his family. There still was a tension, and we didn't talk about it a lot, but there was a tension with some of our leaders and volunteers of, am I going to end up like Mark Houck? Like, is it okay to go out and pray at an abortion facility? Because ever since that happened to him, which happened in 2021 when he was first arrested, has just been, there's been this uneasiness, and what a great victory that we had. I think that we're seeing, there's so much momentum in the grassroots part of the pro-life movement, which is where this battle is now. We're just not ending abortion through legislation in California or New York or Illinois. It's not happening. It is market driven, and that means it's about hearts and minds and changing those hearts and minds on the sidewalk.
Well, we're on the offense, Sean. I think what we're going to see in 2026 and 2027, we're going on the offense. We're going to see advances in organized medicine. We're going to see organizations like the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs is going to become a stronger organization. We were just at Heartbeat International. The whole Pregnancy Resource Center movement is just blown up. About a quarter of a mile north of where we are right now is where what was called the Brazos Valley Crisis Pregnancy Center was, which was right across from the site where our first office was,
Right.
on 29th Street there. At that time, when I was on that board there, in the late 1980s, there were only a couple of hundred or so, 300 or so, pregnancy resource centers in the country. Now we have 6,000 or 7,000?
Yeah, they've just absolutely exploded.
And growing, and not to mention what ultrasound technology has done to save so many babies, and abortion pill reversal, what we've seen with Dr. Delgado and his movement is just awesome. So, but we're going to be seeing even more, and we'll be able to be reporting this and podcasts and other webcasts in the future. I just can't wait to share it.
And the going on offense is definitely something we've done. We've mentioned, particularly with the abortion pills, with highlighting these bad men that have basically normalized forced abortion through the abortion pills. Also, something I wanted to mention earlier is the FDA's investigation. RFK announced this last September, or October rather, their investigation into how the abortion pill even came about. And their investigation of that is something we are following. Our legal team is following, because this could help ban or highly regulate abortion pills across the country. And so this is something that RFK and Trump mentioned this when they were running. I put it on the too good to be true list, but they announced it, and RFK announced it, that he's investigating the legitimacy of how these pills were approved by the FDA, which was an absurd process to say the least. So we will be highlighting that and keeping you up to date on that. But right now, speaking of momentum, we will go to Latin America and Lourdes Varela, who is our Latin American campaign leader, and we are just on fire throughout Latin America. Lourdes, take it away.
Thank you, Sean, and hello everyone there. This is Lourdes Varela from 40 Days for Life in Latin America, and we have great news about 38, maybe more than 40 lives saved from abortion, but 38 already confirmed, and one conversion in Colombia. The girl who was converted, she was working, she was performing abortions, and one day she just went to the volunteers, introduces herself, and she said, I don't know what is happening, but when you are here, you're wearing your t-shirts and your signs and everything, something is happening inside of me, and I cannot help it anymore. So she quit. So pray for her, because she at this moment is jobless, but we are sure that she will find something, as the rest of the conversions that we have been witness of. And also, this is not a confirmation yet, but pray for a hospital that is maybe stepping off performing late abortions. This is not yet a confirmation, because the priest already told us that there are not more abortion. There are some volunteers, but when we approach to ask, they are not given the confirmation of they stopping doing abortion. So please pray for that. And after or behind every life saved, we know that there is a story. We just not saving lives, but hearts of those women who are maybe after that abortion, they will be regret the rest of their days, and this is very, very sad in our world. So a woman that had already her abortion appointment, she just went out of the hospital. I don't know why, maybe just for air or something. She was waiting for her to go inside of the procedures room, but she just went out, and she found the volunteers. A volunteer just approached, and they start to talk, and she just rescheduled her appointment for the next day. But the next day, she called the volunteers and said, I want medical care, because I will continue with my pregnancy, and thank you for being there. You are a miracle of God, because God was mercy with me, and she said, "Truly, you came from God." So we don't know what is happening inside of the hearts, but I'm starting to thinking that this is the favorite cause of and the favorite movement of God. One day in Spain, pro-choice start to gather, and they just start to invite people to come in front of the vigil site. And this was the last Friday of the campaign, and they start to invite a lot of people and say at 11 we will meet. And it was so massive, the invitation, that a priest called the volunteers and said, just take care. Volunteers start to pray, and at 11 they start to show up and yell to the volunteers, and suddenly there was a procession of a daycare. Imagine a little babies and little kids dressed as a Virgin Mary and the apostles and Jesus and with the cross, and they were making the station of the cross because it was scheduled at that daycare, because we didn't plan it. It was no by us or by the pro-choicers. It just happened. And then when pro-choice saw the little babies with the cross, they just couldn't do it anymore. And at 11:30, that it was half an hour later, there was no one from the pro-choice side. So I am sure that this is the favorite movement of God. So persevere in this movement, because we don't know if when we have to be in front of God, that we have the hands full of these days of prayer that are changing hearts, minds, and lives. God bless you all.
Thank you, Lourdes. It's always so inspiring hearing what's going on in Latin America. And for many of those countries, we meaning the United States and England, brought abortion to them. Pro Familia is Planned Parenthood there. They thankfully have been defunded at a historic level by the Trump administration, as they recently announced not only that they were doing the Mexico City policy, which they did right when Trump got back in office, but they just recently expanded the Mexico City policy to further defund Planned Parenthood internationally, so that none of our tax dollars go to abortions throughout Latin America. So great report. We were back here with Steve Carlin, and as we wrap up, I just want to highlight, the demand for 40 Days for Life is at an all-time high. We have, in the last couple of years, trained more leaders, spent more money training more leaders than ever before, a lot of new leaders. We recently had our first ever 365 in-person training, 365 symposium in January. These are leaders that lead a campaign year-round. This is detrimental to the abortion industry and very important in a post-Roe America. And it just feels like the momentum is on our side. We got a lot of good news that 40 Days for Life isn't used to that. You go back to when Obama was president and Cecile Richards was at Planned Parenthood, and just all these years of us kind of banging our head against the wall, going out, praying, fasting, doing our part. And now that we have this new landscape, the need is at an all-time high, but the impact is as well.
I think it goes to show that there's nothing that is set in stone. The future is what we're going to make of it. That sounds cliche, but sometimes cliches are cliche because they're true.
Right.
And we could have just thrown up our hands when Scalia died and walked away, and Roe v. Wade would have never been overturned, and Planned Parenthood never would have been defunded. And same thing here too. We've got momentum, but we need to keep the foot on the gas pedal. That's why we're not slowing down. We're starting the 365 symposium, and we've got Ramona out and about, not just speaking to groups in English, but speaking to them in Spanish. We've got record participation from the Spanish-speaking community, which is important because Planned Parenthood is preying upon the Spanish-speaking community. And so I think about these things in terms of everybody, part of the pro-life mission is that everybody has a purpose. God has a plan for every human life. And that's not just the babies, it's the 40 Days for Life volunteers, supporters, leaders, and God puts the right person in the right place at the right time. And we saw a lot of this campaign. The woman who wasn't going to go to the vigil, but she had an errand on that side of the town, so she stopped and she prayed, and then because she was bilingual, she was able to save a baby from abortion. And so I just think the key for this momentum to continue, there's no guarantee that it continues, but if we continue to pray and petition God and fast and do community outreach and stand out in front of our local abortion business, the sky's the limit. We can see abortion come to an end.
Yeah, and not just with our 365 locations continuing, right now, but we hit our busiest season in the summer as we train record numbers of leaders through our regional workshops, which you do a great job at. Obviously, our big leader training this summer in July in Phoenix, and then we get right back into it with the fall campaign. And so there is a lot of momentum, and I just want to thank all of you, the volunteers and the donors who make this work possible. The need for 40 Days for Life is greater than ever. And because of your generosity, we've been able to catch up the last 2 years, especially with our growth and with this high demand. So I want to encourage you tonight. We will do a financial appeal. And so we have a matching challenge that a group of donors put forward to encourage you to give. So you see that matching amount on the screen. And we don't ask for money during the podcast, so we don't ask for money a lot online throughout the year. We are asking tonight on this high demand webcast so that we can hit that high demand and not just meet it, but give everybody the resources and tools they need. We provide our leaders with more resources than ever before. And that's the way it should be. That's our job, is to protect our leaders legally, which you heard from General Counsel Matt Britton is going extremely well with a victory over the DOJ. And we're also providing them with the resources that they need to save a baby. One of our longtime leaders wrote a card, and it meant the world to me. It was after our 365 symposium, and it just said, "Dear 40 Days for Life team, thank you for making saving a baby so easy." And that is a beautiful testimonial, but it's what we're here for, is to make saving a baby as easy as possible. And of course, it's never easy, but it is always worth it. And your generosity allows us to provide these resources and these trainings. This is the best thing we can spend money on, is investing in our local leaders. Planned Parenthood does not have that. The abortion movement does not have that. They do not have the commitment of our dedicated local leaders and local volunteers. That's why this is successful, and that's why abortion is in fact ending. So please be generous. The matching challenge ends on Tuesday, April the 21st at midnight. And so you see online, you can give a one-time gift, and that will be doubled, matched dollar for dollar up to the amount on your screen. If you want to give a monthly gift, which I highly recommend and encourage you, this is the internet, you can just turn me off if you don't want to give anything, but if you can give a monthly gift, if you're currently a monthly donor, please go up $5, $10, $20 a month. It makes a tremendous difference. If you're not currently a monthly donor, start somewhere. Give $40 a month, give $10 a month, give $5 a month, but start somewhere. That allows us, the reason I put a lot of emphasis on monthly donations is because it allows us to spend less time on fundraising and more time on our mission. And these webcasts have allowed us to do that. These matching challenges have allowed us to do it. That's why I'm very grateful for the folks that put this upfront match up until Tuesday, April the 21st. All of your donations will be met dollar for dollar. If you give a monthly pledge, that amount annualized will be doubled. So if you give $25 a month, that's $300 for the year. The $300 will be matched. It will be a $600 total gift. So please sign up. If you can give online, right now. Or you can download that form and mail it. It just has to be postmarked by April 21st, and it will go toward the match. So thank you for your generosity. Thank you for helping us serve those who are saving so many lives and building this great pro-life movement and expanding our mission to the darkest corners of our culture as the abortion movement gets crazier and more lethal by the day. And so we are very, very grateful for helping us take prayer, fasting, peaceful vigil, and real medical alternatives to these abortion facilities. So again, we can hit the match up until April 21st, and for every level of gift, you'll see there's different options of books and things that you'll get from us for your generosity. So be sure to take advantage of that. And as we close out, we will do so the way we always do things at 40 Days for Life, and that is with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of life. Thank you for the gift of freedom, that we can go out and stand on the street and offer hope to someone who believes that there is no hope for them, to offer mercy to someone who feels that there is no mercy for them, and to certainly offer alternatives to abortion for so many who believe there are no alternatives and that they are trapped. We praise you for the lives that have been saved, for the abortion workers who have had a change of heart and turned to you, and certainly for the abortion facilities that have closed their doors as we sit in one right now during this webcast. So continue to give us courage, continue to give us fortitude, and help us do everything for your greater glory. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, and please have a wonderful evening. And again, we have until April the 21st to meet that matching challenge. So all your gifts, no matter how large or small, are deeply appreciated. Thank you, God bless, and good night.